While working on my last video, I came across an interesting passage from Lady Catelyn, who's now Lady Stoneheart in the books, which made me think she could be the Valonqar, and in turn I thought, why not make a video about it? So here we are. If you want to hear how this undead POS could be the Valonqar, you're in the right place, just keep watching. I should mention that this is a books-only theory, as Lady Stoneheart did not carry over to the show. So for a quick refresher, if you don't read the books, Lady Stoneheart is the resurrected Catelyn Stark. After Nymeria pulled Cat's corpse from the river in which it had been discarded, Beric Dondarrion kissed it, passing his flame of life to Cat, which killed him and raised her from the dead. How tragic. The Valonqar is a person who's been fated to kill Cersei. We don't know anything about the Valonqar other than the person isn't the eldest in their line of siblings. So how did I bridge the gap between the Stoneheart and the Valonqar? Let's talk about the passage from Lady Catelyn that I mentioned in the intro. In A Clash of Kings, Lady Catelyn says this to Brienne. I have no skill with swords, but that does not mean that I do not dream of riding to King's Landing and wrapping my hands around Cersei Lannister's white throat and squeezing until her face turns black. Now let's look at what Maggie the Frog told Cersei in A Feast for Crows. Gold shall be their crowns and gold their shrouds, and when your tears have drowned you, the Valonqar shall wrap his hands about your pale white throat and choke the life from you. Did you catch the Easter egg? Lady Catelyn said she wanted to wrap her hands around Cersei Lannister's, quote, white throat and squeeze until she died. Maggie told Cersei that the Valonqar shall wrap his hands about her, quote, pale white throat and choke the life out of her. To me, it sounds as though Catelyn wanted to do exactly what Maggie said the Valonqar would do, just as Maggie said the Valonqar would do it, and Catelyn described Cersei's throat in the exact same way as Maggie did, by calling it white. I don't think it's a coincidence that George used the same words here. He wrote it that way for a reason. At this point in the story, meaning currently, Lady Catelyn is now Lady Stoneheart. Her single purpose is vengeance, and she gets it by killing Lannisters, Boltons, Freys, and their affiliates. She kills them by hanging. So, if she got her hands on Cersei now and hung Cersei, it would still fit the description of how the Valonqar would murder her because the noose would choke the life out of her. Is it another coincidence that George gave Lady Stoneheart an MO that still fits the Valonqar prophecy? Standing alone, perhaps, but if we combine it with how he wrote Lady Catelyn and Maggie the Frog, both saying white throat, it seems like a setup. Let's get something else out of the way. Lady Catelyn / Stoneheart is the eldest of her living siblings, but she's not Lord Hoster Tully's eldest child. According to Cat, her parents had 2 sons that both died in infancy prior to Catelyn's own birth, so she qualifies as a Valonqar or younger sibling. Lady Catelyn, aka Lady Stoneheart, aka the bully to motherless children, certainly has motive to want Cersei dead. Bran was pushed and subsequently crippled because he witnessed Cersei and Jaime knocking boots. She also believes the Lannisters sent an assassin to kill Bran because of what he saw. The Lannisters mastermind the Red Wedding, which led to her own murder in addition to Robb's. The Lannisters executed Ned with his own family's ancestral greatsword. They held at least one daughter hostage and did who knows what to Arya and Catelyn's mind because nobody ever addressed Arya in any of the communications. An argument could be made that Catelyn has more motive than anyone to want Cersei dead, so she's certainly a worthy Valonqar candidate in that regard. Lastly, let's talk about the X-Factor in all of this. George R. R. Martin's affection for Lady Catelyn. In a July 2017 interview with Time magazine, which I'll link in the description box, Martin addresses his affinity for the character. First, he laments that Lady Catelyn was not brought back as Lady Stoneheart in the show, that decision was David and Dan's, and he argued against it. When asked what was the most difficult part of the series to write, Martin says the Red Wedding. In fact, it was so difficult for him that he skipped that chapter and completed the rest of A Storm of Swords before he wrote it. And why was it so hard for George? In his own words, because I'd been inhabiting Catelyn for so long. George also intimates that it was hard to say goodbye to Robb while pointing out that he wasn't a point-of-view character, in addition to it being hard to say goodbye to some of the minor characters who died at the Red Wedding. But the fact that George named Catelyn first, noted Robb wasn't a viewpoint character, and never used the names of the minor characters, tells us that Lady Catelyn is the crown jewel of that bunch. He didn't want to close the door on her. George was asked about that as well, if Lady Stoneheart was created because he couldn't say goodbye to Lady Catelyn. George admits that that was part of it. He also goes on to detail that he used Lady Stoneheart to start a dialogue with J.R.R. Tolkien to show that death, particularly a, quote, violent, traumatic death, would change a person. They wouldn't come back as nice as ever. Essentially, Lady Stoneheart is meant to contrast Gandalf the White, who was Gandalf the Grey prior to his death in the Mines of Moria. So, why am I telling you all of this? I'm trying to show how invested George is in Lady Catelyn and how that could lend itself to Lady Stoneheart being the Valonqar. George wouldn't bring her back on some bullcrap. Surely he'd have something more monumental in store for her than hanging dusty-ass phrase. For Pete's sake, he's using the character of Lady Stoneheart to call out J.R.R. Tolkien. So Lady Stoneheart has to do something epic, and he can't half-ass it here, otherwise he kind of looks like a fool. Last we've heard, Lady Stoneheart appears to have forced Brienne to lure Jaime Lannister into a trap. Some fans think she'll kill Jaime, and while I wouldn't be mad at a playa for that, something tells me Jaime won't die at her hands. At this point, there's too much story left for him, and in my opinion, he'll die fighting a different sort of undead monstrosity. But I digress. Some fans also think Lady Stoneheart will send Jaime to King's Landing to kill Cersei, but that doesn't quite sit right with me either. Lady Catelyn freed Jaime Lannister once already and sent him to King's Landing, and that turned out horribly. So why would she do it again? Especially considering George's goal is to make her totally different than she was in life. Meaning, Lady Stoneheart isn't playing games, and she would show no mercy this time around. Also, having Lady Stoneheart send Jaime to kill Cersei would be underwhelming. Something bigger needs to happen to dignify this character George loves so much and is using to call out Tolkien. So, if you were trying to dignify a character like that, to dignify Lady Stoneheart, would you have Lady Stoneheart send someone else that she already would want to kill? Would you have her send that person to do a murder, or would you have Lady Stoneheart do those murders herself? In my opinion, you would have Lady Stoneheart do the murders on her own, and there's not really a better way to dignify the character and to dignify the setup George has already wrote for her to be the Valonqar. And that'll do it, folks. I hope you enjoyed my take on how Lady Stoneheart fits the Valonqar prophecy. I know this isn't the most popular interpretation of the prophecy, but sometimes it's fun to take the road less traveled. Let me know how you feel down in the comments. Until next time, I'm Ashley of Noth, and I thank you for watching.